Introduction to SmartSuite. This is a session for anyone considering installing SmartSuite library, or for anyone that has just upgraded from version 2 to version 3 of SmartSuite library, or anyone thinking about upgrading. I believe that once you've seen this, you'll think, why not? So we're going to start with patron borrowing parameters. Okay, you've got patrons on the system. You want to be able to set their borrowing parameters. We're going to then deal with how to add, change, or delete patrons. We're also going to deal with how to add, change, or delete a catalog record manually. And of course, most sites are SKIS or Z3950 subscription services like Library of Congress. So if you want to import data from a foreign system, we're going to show you how to do that. We call it global cataloging. And lastly, we're going to touch on reports, and in particular, overdues. You've got all this data in the system. How can I report on it? And in particular, I've circulated some material. I want some overdue reports out. How do I get it? So let's start with borrowing parameters. First of all, to be able to do anything from a management level, you need to be logged in. This is an out-of-the-box view of the system. So when you log in, when you get into the system and you put your URL in, this record here will be the most current. If you added 3 new records, they'll shuffle down 3. If you added 10 new records, they'll shuffle down 10. So what we're trying to do with the inquiry screen is just promote everything new to anyone that comes up and looks up at your system. They can obviously search for anything they like. So this is an out-of-the-box search screen. There are a whole range of other options you have. So you can change your search screen to a range of options. This is another alternative. You might say, I want more information. So you click on that. That's another alternative. And there are huge options for setting the OPAC. But to do anything as an administrator, you got to click on the menu button. We're going to call that the Hamburger Menu because it looks sort of like a hamburger with a bit of tomato sauce on the side. So that's the Hamburger Menu. And if you want to go into any of the parameters in the system, you go down to the configuration. Okay, and because we're talking about borrowing parameters, it's an authority file. So if you want to do anything with the authority files, you click on Authority File Editor, and that will bring up all the authority files, and it's in alphabetic sequence. Now, if you're talking about patron borrowing parameters, it is always held in the class grade because it's tied to a class grade. So when you put a patron into the system, you must allocate a class grade to them. They're a year 10, they're a year 12, they're a student, they're a parent, they're a teacher, they're a temporary teacher. Everyone has to be classified into one of the areas here. So, and you can put as many types of borrowers into the system based on the class grade. Everything you do in SmartSuite is unlimited. So you can, if you're a P to 12 school, you can have P all the way to 12. So that's 13 grades plus staff. That's 14 grades, but you can have temporary staff, you can have itinerant staff, and so you can keep adding as many grades as you like. But when you click on the class grade, there's all the different class grades in the system. Okay, so if we look at number 7, year 7s as an example, you click on the pencil to change a system, or you type a new one here and click a plus sign, and that's how you create a new class grade. We'll talk about one that's already there, which is year 7. So when I click on the pencil, these are their borrowing parameters. They have a security level. Okay, security level is quite important, and just very briefly, if I categorize this group as a security 7, and I'd recommend that your security level correspond to your year level. So a year 7 would have a security 7, a year 10 would have a security 10, a year 12 will have a security 12. Well, a teacher, they don't have a level, so we say, why don't you allocate 50 for the teachers? So if it was a staff, you'll say 50. And then if you were administrators, I'll give yourself 999. How the security level works is If I have a book and it's an expensive art book, I can classify that book in the cataloging system as a security 12. In other words, I only want it loaned out to year 12 students and above. Then when a year 7 comes to borrow it, they will not be able to borrow a year 12 book. If it was a senior fiction and I made it year 10 and this was a 7, then they won't be able to. But if it was a year 10 and the security was 10, they'll be able to borrow it. If the security of the item was 11 and the student was a year 10, they won't be able to borrow it. But if the security was 10 and the student was year 12, then they will be able to borrow it, because it's so the item can be classified as year 7 or year 10, which means year 10, 11 and 12 can borrow it. Okay, if you only want teachers to borrow it, make it 50. So a staff will have a 50, then only teachers can borrow it. The next parameter here is the final borrowing date. So this is the date you want all the books back. So if I want the books back on the 13th of December because I'm closing the library on the 15th of December, then whenever you put that in there, if you borrow a book out to someone on the 10th of December and they are 14-day limits, it'll calculate 14 days, but it'll cut it back to the 13th of December. If you say that it's a staff member and they can borrow for 365 days, which is a year, no matter when they borrow it, it will calculate that expiry date, but then it'll cut it back to the 13th of December. That's what that date is for. The expiry date is a little bit different. The expiry date is when the student expires. A lot of people work out, if it's a year 7, they'll expire, 8 years from now or 9 years from now. If they're a year 8, they'll expire. I recommend that figure out when you're going to retire, add another 20 years on it, and make that the expiry date for everybody. And that way you never have to worry about the expiry date. The only time that becomes important is for your year 12s or your year 6s, the last year group that will not be coming back the following year. So if this was a year 12, then I'd say, my year 12s, they leave on the 15th of August and I'll never see them again. So I will expire them on the 1st of August, because I'll say, I don't want them to borrow anything after the 1st of August because I know I'm not going to get them back and I'm not going to be able to have access to those people. That's when that becomes important. It's only for the last group year, so like year 12s as an example. But other than that, make them all 15 years or 20 years from when you're going to retire, and then you don't have to worry about that. The next parameter is the loan limit. How many items can they borrow? They can borrow 5 items, and for how long? For 14 days. Okay, they can renew it 5 times on the web, and they can renew it for 14 days. And how many books can they reserve? The next one is very important, multiple copy. Never tick multiple copy for any students, because if you do that, what will happen is if a student left a book at home, they'll just go to the library and borrow another item. And you do not want that happening. You do not want them borrowing another item if they've already got it. The only reason you'd put that tick in there is if it was a teacher and she wanted to borrow a whole bunch of books, and you want to allow her to take multiple copies because she might want to distribute it to her class and then get it back from their class. So teachers can borrow multiple copies, but students shouldn't. That's a priority that you need to decide if you're going to set it or not. Patron override is very important. So let's say, for argument's sake, that this was a staff member. So let me close out of here and let's go down to staff. Staff. There we go. And I'll just click on that. Now, the staff can borrow 200 books for 1,000 days, and they can renew 200 books for 1,000 days. Okay. Now, they can take multiple copies of the one book. Now, the loan period of 1,000 days is really an arbitrary number, because what will happen when it calculates 1,000 days, it'll exceed the 13th of December. So it'll cut it back and say, yeah, I know you got 1,000 days. However, 13th of December is when I want the items back. Okay, so they can borrow 200 books out here. Now, the patron override is important because if they borrow a book and the book has been signaled as overnight loan, what will happen is overnight loan, which is 1 day, and it might be an atlas. When this teacher comes to borrow it, it'll say no, an overnight loan is an overnight loan. So that 1,000-day period, you won't get it for 1,000 days, or you won't get it for 365 days, okay? 365. And renewal period is 365. You can't borrow it for a year. However, if you say the patron can override the loan limit on the book, okay, as in this case, I've clicked override. So that overnight loan atlas, which is generally 1 day, now by ticking that, you are saying that they can borrow it for 365 days. Okay. Now, when you click the save button, you have to watch really fast. And I don't think you can watch it fast enough, because when I click save, it's done. You didn't see anything happen, but it did. It actually went and grabbed all the patrons that had a rating of staff and applied all these changes to it. So watch again, save. It is so fast. That's how quick it does it. Okay. So if I go to my year 11s as an example, and I say my year 11s can borrow 7 items and they can renew 7 items. And if I go save, done. So whether you had 2 students in year 11 or you had 200 students or 2,000 students in year 11, just by clicking that save, instantly done. That's how fast the system is. Okay, so those are the borrowing parameters. The next thing we're going to deal with is patrons. How do I add a patron, change a patron, delete a patron? So I've got menu, and then I've got patron and patron management. Whenever you go into the patron management, it will always bring up your login in the system. So if I've logged in as Lib, it'll bring up Lib. If I've logged in as Jonathan, it'll bring up Jonathan. If I've logged in as Marianne, the librarian or teacher librarian, it'll bring up your record. And if you want to add a new person, you just click new. It'll give you a blank screen, and this is where you'll put in your barcode. Having barcodes for patrons is a really old, archaic way of doing it. And why do you want to run a whole new set of numbers for the patron? So the patron has a student number, then they have a library number, then they have a transport card number. So you might want to consider for the barcode using the student's admin number. Okay, we don't care what field what information you put in there. That's just an identifier. So you can give him a barcode, or you can say, you know what, I'm just going to use the admin number. That way I don't have to go and buy a second set of barcodes every year, and I don't have to pay $100 for it. I'll put that $100 towards my books. The next thing is the username. Not important, but you can put it in. So if I put in as Jenny Scott, Jenny.Scott. Okay, so first name dot surname. That's a nice username. So I will use that as a username. You could have put anything else in there you wanted to. Okay, the next thing is their name, Jenny. The surname is Scott. And the email address is jscott@vic.gov.edu.au. You can't put a Gmail address there. It has to be an educational email address in there. And don't worry about the security, because remember I said when I select the year level, when I save that record, she will now be given a security of 11, because that's how I set up the authority file. What homeroom are they in? So you can choose your homeroom. Okay. And then the role is a student by default. So I will just go save. Okay. Password is not set, but it'll save the record. So if I want to give this person a password, I can go change password. And the password I'm going to give everyone, whether they're a teacher or a student, I'm going to give everyone the password of password. Password. Now, the reason why I've done that is because when I've given everyone the password of password, change password on next login, and I go yes. So what will happen is that when someone forgets their password and they've changed it to something, they forget it, I can just come back here and say, all right, Jenny, I've reset it to password. When you log in, it's going to ask you to change the password. So they will go in and it'll automatically ask them to change their password. The password's encrypted, so we don't know what it is, you won't know what it is, and only the person who logged in will know what it is. And if they forget it, go call them up, go change password and change it again. That's how that would work. Okay, so that's a really neat way of putting in the password. And if I go email the login, they will get a welcome letter and it'll give them all their information and it'll tell them their password's password. When you log in, you have to change it. So you can also do that here. Now, how can they log in? So whether they're at home, whether they're traveling in London or in Paris, or they're just on the beach somewhere and they borrowed a friend's iPad or their phone or their Apple device or their Android device or their Windows device, it doesn't matter. When they put their library URL in there, their library URL will generally be schoolsname.functionalsolution.com.au, and then they click the sign in button. It'll ask them for their login. Their login, they can log in with their barcode or their username or their email address and then the password that you've given them. So that's how you would go ahead and create a user on the system. If you want to change a user, just go find and type in SM, and that'll give me all my SMs, and I'll go Mike Smith, and you bring them up. You can change anything you like. Don't forget to save it, and that's it. So you can find anyone by just typing in M, and that'll bring up everyone with M. You go Mike Smith. So it can be first name, surname, part of the name, starting of the name, whatever, and it will bring them up, even their barcode. Okay, so that's how you go to find someone's record to bring it up. If you want to delete someone, you go ahead and you find them, and then you just go delete. And it says deleting this user will automatically remove all their borrowing history, and you can go, do you want to delete? And you go, yep, and it'll delete. Of course, if he's got loans, he will not be able to be deleted. Okay, if you got a photograph for this student, why not photograph Mike? Just take your iPad, photograph him, call this application up on your iPad, and then just go upload the image. Go to where you've stored it on your iPad or on your PC or laptop, and then just click on the file and their image will appear here. That's how easy it is to upload images. There are obviously other ways of doing bulk uploads and bulk Patron imports, okay? But we are doing introduction to SmartSuite. So we'll do those issues in a different training session. The next thing we're going to deal with is how to add a catalog record. Now that I've added a Patron record, if I go to the menu button and I go catalog record, guess what? It is exactly the same. Okay, so you've got find, and I want to find cat, and it'll bring up all my records with cat. Choose the one that you want to change. You can add, change, or delete, and there's all your information up here. Okay, you want to add a subject, you just go into a blank line and you type in GO, and it'll bring up all your GOs in there, and you can just select a subject. If you type in a subject that doesn't exist, Mike's demo, it'll tell you the subject doesn't exist, and if you go OK, it'll add the subject to the system and to the authority file and also add it, and that's the same for all of that information. So adding a catalog record, changing a catalog record, deleting a catalog record is exactly the same as a Patron. So if you know how to do one, you can do the other, not a problem. Okay, now we're going to go into SKIS cataloging. So learn to add, change, or delete a Patron, learn to add, change, or delete a catalog record, okay? And if you want a SKIS catalog, that's even better. So all you do is you go to your Hamburger Menu, go down to catalog and global catalog, okay? We don't call it SKIS because we do any Z3950 source. So I'm leaving that catalog record. I don't want to save it. Bring up my SKIS cataloging. And all you do before you use this the first time, you only have to do this once. And once you click on down the bottom next to configuration, not the configuration button, but the up arrow button. Click on that and you go to default spine label. You click on default spine label and you choose the spine label that you're going to use. Okay, once you choose the spine label you're going to use, remember to hit save. Okay, and once you hit save, you exit out and you need to reload this page the first time. Okay, otherwise, if you've already done that, anytime you want to skip catalog, you just go to menu, you just go to catalog, go to global catalog, and all you do here is you zap in your ISBN number, okay, and then you put in your barcode. You zap in the next ISBN number and the next barcode, okay, and then you zap in your next ISBN number and then your next barcode, and then you put in your next ISBN number and then the next barcode. And what will happen is, if the book doesn't exist on SKIS or the ISBN number is wrong, you're going to get a red. If the book exists on SKIS, that will be green. And that's it. That's all you do to cataloging. And once you've cataloged everything on the system, then all you do is you go, I want to print my barcodes, my spine labels. So you just go print, and that will print out the spine labels for all the books you've cataloged. And you'll get a little option that will appear down the bottom that says, how many blanks do you want me to leave? So if you're reusing a set of spine labels and you've already used 13, say leave 13 blanks or leave 6 blanks, and it'll print. Now, if you wanted to go ahead and add bibliographic information to the title, so you might want to click on the title, okay, then you can go ahead and it'll bring up the catalog screen, and you can add the costing, the loan period, the renewal period, and so forth and so on. But if you've got 60 books that you want to catalog and 20 of them are fiction, the next 20 are non-fiction, the next 10 are teachers' references, well, what you should do is go in here, put in the location, the sublocation, put in the cost center, the supplier, the price, and then go ISBN barcode for the first book, and it'll inherit all of this. And if that information all the same for the next 9 books, just go ISBN barcode, ISBN barcode, ISBN barcode for the next 9 books. And now you're going to do the next one, which is non-fiction. You change the parameters for non-fiction, ISBN barcode, ISBN barcode, ISBN barcode, and that's all you do. And that's all there is, and you never have to go back into the catalog record ever again. Okay? The last thing we're going to deal with is, all right, I've circulated. How do I circulate? So if you click on the menu and you click on circulation and circulation, okay, this is the circulation screen. And up here, you can enter the patron's barcode up in the top here. So if we enter the patron's barcode, he will come up. Then the item barcode, next patron barcode, item barcode, and the next patron doesn't have his borrower's card. So you can just go SMITH, Smith, and you can call him up by just putting in his name, and it'll bring up the patron over there. If there's any reason why they can't borrow, it'll tell you. You just go override, John Smith's up there, and now you can enter the barcode. So I want to borrow that book to him. If there's reasons for it, it'll say this was marked as lost. You go, yep, that's okay. So it'll now check out that book to that person. That's the second book, and it says this was out to Andrew Smith. Okay, so now it's brought that one, and that's the last current copy. I can go on and enter the next barcode. Okay, and again this was deleted, so but I restored it back into the system. Okay, and so essentially what will happen is all your loans will be blue, white, blue, white, blue, white. Okay, if you call this patron up and this book was overdue, okay, so let me just force the system to make it overdue so that you can see what it looks like. I'll just go renew, it'll renew. So that's the overdue. So any overdues will appear in red whenever you call somebody up. Okay, and you can say, look, I'm sorry, Johns. You've got Matthew Flinders' cat, and you've got an overdue. I'm not allowing you to borrow. He said, oh, but I returned it. So we said he returned it. You can go claimed return. You can put a message here about the claimed return. He said he returned it, but we know he didn't, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. So you can put your message up in there, and you click on here and you go claimed return. put your message in there, and once you put your message in there, the claim return process is done. The book will go into brown. Okay. If he said he lost this book, the cat in the, on the mat, you just tick on the book that he's lost, and then you just go lost. Okay, and that book is lost. If it's a teacher and she says, I know I've got all these 60 books, and I know that they're due back on Friday, but I need them for the rest of the term. So what you can do is you can click in here and you can say, all right, how about you bring them back on the 16th of September, and then you just go renew, and it will renew them all to whatever date. If you just click the normal renew without having a date, it will renew it normally. Okay, so that's how circular. If you want to return books, click on return, and you go ahead here and you zap in the barcode of the books you want to return. Okay, and if there's any reason why, it'll give you all the circulation warnings. You can override that, and that'll return that book, and it'll return this book, and it'll return this book, and there's the reasons for it. Okay, now what you can do is you can say, I've finished all my borrowings, kids are coming to borrow now, all my returns, kids are coming to borrow. Just go to loans, okay, and it'll come back up here, and off you go, and loans. You want to return books, it's a quiet session, go click here and just continue returning your books. That's all there is to it. Okay, now if you've got a particular patron up here, so let me just go here and go Andrews. So let's go and get this particular person. Okay, no, if you've got a patron up here and you wanted to do a listing of his loans or his overdues, you can just choose, I want the overdue items for this particular patron, click on that menu, and that's how you'll run your overdues for this particular individual. Okay, but if you want to do the overdues for everybody, then that's the reports module. You click on Hamburger Menu, you go down to reports, and you go reports. And in this particular area, there's all the reports above here that come with the system. So I go to overdue reports and overdues by classification. Okay, and then it says class grade equal to. You click in here and you go, I want my 7s, I want my 8s, I want my 11s, and I want my 12s. And then you just go generate. And once you generate the reports, it'll show you as a template what it's like. This is what they're going to get. Okay, and if you want to send this to a teacher, because that teacher looks after the 7, 8, 11, and 12, you can go, I'm going to not just print them, I'm going to email them. So you click on email, you specify who you want to email it to, and then you just go send it now. Now, the thing is, I did a class grade. Let's say it was a homeroom report, and I want to send it to the homeroom teacher. I can put the homeroom teacher's email here, and when they get it, they'll get that report. However, they won't be able to reply to it because it'll say it's come from do not reply. But if you want the homeroom teacher to correspond with you about these students, you can go in here and put in your email address, and the subject will be, here's your homeroom group's overdues. Please let me know if you have any problems with the students. So that can be your subject, and then you just go send now. Now, if you want to send this every Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock or every Monday at a particular time, you choose the starting date. So you can say, all right, on Monday the 15th at 8 a.m. before anyone comes to school, I'm going to schedule this report to go to this particular person with this message in the subject. And you go schedule. And you never have to ever do a homeroom report ever again. That's how you can do it. Okay? So you can print a report, you can email a report, or you can schedule a report. And that functionality goes for any report in the reports system. Now, the report system is very, very powerful. So play around in here and watch for our YouTube live event on building reports, running reports, changing reports, and saving my changes. So we have a totally different YouTube live for reports. Thank you very much for getting involved in our walk around SmartSuite for new users.